the meeting. There we go.
Okay. So welcome everybody to our work session. I'll call the work session to order. And we're here to take a look at the final schematics on the Central Library and the Redmond Library. And Todd, do you want to do the introductions?
Yes.
And or
Yes.
start us out?
Yeah. So this is a very exciting point in our designs. We're moving just out of our schematic design phase for Central and Redmond. And I thought before we introduce the architects, I thought it would be great if Greg, if you can kind of just give us a sense of where we are and what we need from the board at this point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Hello, everyone. So as Todd said, we've gotten to the end of the schematic design phase, which really helps us define the scope of the project, right? You're going to see a lot of information about the site and the building and its shape and stuff. And I think some things to keep in mind as you go through and look at the designs that the team has come up with is, what is it that we're looking for yourselves and DPL to bless? What is the next steps, right, in the design process? And when you say, hey, this is okay, what does that mean, you know, as far as continuing the design process and seeing what, you know, ultimately the design becomes. And so I think some key points today are our site plan. What does the site look like? You know, where are the parking lots? Where is the building situated on the site? How is the site being utilized and planned? That's streets, parking lots, everything. And that's something that, you know, you want to pretty much lock in at this phase so that we're not moving anything major. Believe me, through the design process, they will be detailing out the details, the finishes, the selections of materials, whether it's hardscapes, plants, etc., and fine tuning how things fit and move things around. It's not like anything is locked 100% in stone, but we really want to know that our site plan is fairly well locked down. Relative to the buildings, it's looking at the size and shape of the buildings. You know, we want to know that that's pretty much set in stone, fairly close. You know, there would be, like I said, always some little tweaks. Our design team has to have the latitude to go through and do that. I think the finishes, you'll see some level of finishes showing up where there's stone, where there's glass, where there's metals on the exteriors and woods. And while those are there to really help define the project of how we're progressing and helping us budget, they also are, you know, final finishes come in our next phase called design development. And so we'll have plenty of time to really look at finishes and what the finished materials are in the next phase. So we're really looking for the board to say, yeah, we're good with the shape of the building, the context of the building, and the general layout. Even the interiors, you know, as we go through, they're fairly well and solidified of what area, what's happening on each floor and each area within the floor. But I think our design team, as they really go into this next phase, will fine tune specific areas, certain sizes, and make adjustments as necessary with us. And you'll see that in the design development phase, which is a few months out, but it'll come back to you at that point. So didn't want you thinking that you are signing away everything. It's really big picture view today. So I think that's kind of the high points, Todd, that I had. And our design team will lead us through the detailed design and presentation here.
Okay, I'll share my screen, and thanks for teeing us up, Greg.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Matt. I'll let you, Matt, if you could introduce your team, because you got probably some people we didn't have on before. And just a reminder, as they present, they'll go through each section, and when they get to the points where they're ready for questions, we'll hold questions until that point. So go ahead, Matt.
Okay, maybe I'll stop sharing my screen so we can see each other. Yep, again, I think we've met before. Matt Alboris from Miller Hall, the project manager overseeing all the library projects. And I'll pass it over to Ruth, and then we've got Sean as well.
Yeah. Hi, good afternoon. It's nice to see all of you again. Ruth Baleko, one of the partners with Sean at Miller Hall, and kind of with Matt, you know, we're kind of smeared across all of the bond projects, kind of providing that consistency in process and in design.
And I'm Sean Roberts, a partner in charge with Miller Hall, partner of Ruth's, and more on the management side. And we have another couple of people from our team who are joining today. So I'll pass it on to John.
Hi, everyone. John McKay with Miller Hall, Design Assist, and I am also working on all the projects. Nice to see you again.
Janelle?
Hey there, I'm Janelle. I'm also with Miller Hall, and I am leading the Redmond Library to push it through design.
And then from Steele Associates, we have Derek, who is my counterpart, and boots on the ground there in Bend.
Hi, everyone.
And I'm just looking around. I think that is the design team on the call today, but there's definitely many others that are in the background, making sure that we're producing all this work for you guys to review. Okay, should I go ahead and start, or are there any other introductions? Okay, I'll share my screen. And I'm gonna, great. Okay. And thanks, Greg, again for teeing us up. We had these two kind of schedule slides that kind of were an overview for what you had already kind of presented. So we are at the end of schematic design here at the end of January, and Greg kind of covered those things that we're going to kind of show you today, what is really set in stone and what is still kind of to be further developed in the next phase in design development. And as Greg mentioned, we're just kicking off design development, and that'll be kind of going through the next few months where we're going to start to kind of develop the technical aspects of these buildings, how the MEP or the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems work and are coordinated throughout the building, selection of both exterior materials and interior finishes. And those are some of the things that we'll be presenting to you at the end of this design phase. We wanted to kind of touch on the decision that you guys recently made with regard to certifying both the Central and Redmond projects. We're really excited about the fact that we are going to now be officially certifying these projects. And the design team is taking a new look as we reach this 100% SD deadline and evaluating where we are in terms of that LEED scorecard, and knowing that, you know, we can certainly meet the desire to have a minimum LEED silver building. And in fact, kind of based on our early assessment, we feel like we can kind of exceed that based on all of like the decisions that we've made to date, knowing that we can even within the budget that we're working within. And so I think we've shared this slide with you, but a lot of the same kind of strategies are the things that we're still pursuing with regard to the site and landscaping, kind of making sure that we are being, making sure that we're minimizing that site disturbance and not removing too much soil or trying to import too much soil to both projects. And then obviously working with Walker Macy, our landscape architects, to select native landscapes. And we'll talk about that more as we get to the design of the projects. The second category of energy, we are planning for, you know, looking at the mechanical systems and making sure that we're specifying systems that are really low energy consumption, and making sure that we're providing for high performance building envelopes. And then combined with that, the use of solar panels on the rooftops, and we're investigating potentially having them in the staff parking areas, providing canopy over the staff parking to provide additional solar panels there. The hope is that for both Central and Redmond that we would get to net zero energy. So producing as much energy as we need for both Central and Redmond projects. And then in terms of water, we're also looking at specifying low flow fixtures throughout the buildings, but also kind of capturing any rainwater and stormwater that is on the site and reusing that for both irrigation and toilet flushing fixtures. But again, we're evaluating what is the right mix of the use of the water that we can collect on the site. And then finally, building materials and occupant health. We're definitely looking at specifying materials or products for each of these projects that have a low embodied carbon content. So using mass timber or heavy timber for both Central and Redmond as much as possible. And then we have worked very hard on developing our specifications to avoid any red list or toxic chemicals in any of the building products that we are specifying for these projects. So that includes low VOCs and eliminating PVC from the projects. So we'll continue to work on those, and those will all have an impact on kind of the level of LEED certification that we can get for both of these projects. Okay, great. And so I think we'll plan to kind of run through the design, or I'll pass this off to Ruth to present the designs. And we're going to start with the branch libraries, move on to Redmond, and then finish off with Central.
Yeah, and Derek, you know, we can kind of tag team this because you have kind of the, obviously, we've been collaborating on kind of how these go together based on the existing conditions and being smart with the, you know, the structure that we have. So Lapine, if we go to the next slide, I'll kind of describe what we're seeing. The entry is in the same spot that you're accustomed to seeing.
Ruth,
Ruth,
before you start, I probably should say, at the beginning, we talked about being at the end of schematic design phase. That is for Central and Redmond. So when we're looking at the branches, this is just starting. So this is more for your information than the other two where we'll actually need you to commit.
Great point. Yeah, because all of the libraries are on a slightly different schedule. And so these are a little further behind. We're just starting to work on it. Great clarification.
Hey, Todd,
Yes.
can we ask questions as we're going along here to clarify?
I think the goal is, and Ruth will help out, I think she's left spots for questions, so maybe we can do that as we go along.
Ray,
Okay.
why don't I do Sisters in Lapine together, and then we'll pause before we go to Redmond for questions. Would that work?
Oh, because my questions were really for the speaker that just finished.
Oh, okay.
You want to wait?
No, I think if there are questions with regard to the schedule and sustainability initiatives, we could certainly respond to those.
Yeah, I just had a question, two questions on when you're talking about the energy.
Mm-hmm.
You say reduce whole building energy consumption by 50% over 2019 baseline. How do you get a baseline for the new central library?
So the baseline is based on an ASHRAE standard. So it's an industry standard of what a typical building of this type would consume in terms of energy.
So knowing the design of the building,
Right, exactly.
baseline.
So our envelope system and how we develop that, but also the mechanical equipment that we select will also impact kind of how much energy is required to run that type of equipment. And we're targeting that reduction from the baseline standard of a building of this size.
So it's more of a philosophical statement than a real engineering.
Oh, it's a technically measured comparison, right?
So I'm a little confused. If we don't have the design of the building, how can we have the baseline?
And I'm definitely not the best person to speak about this, but this is a common way that we measure new construction or improved renovations and understand the level of improvement. And Sean, feel free to jump in here if you can word this better, but the ASHRAE standard gives you a way to assemble the theoretical energy use of a building at a particular point in time. And then you're comparing what we know about the new one. And
Okay, so it'll be a reiterative process as you're going through the central library. Okay, the other question I had, or concern I have with the wellness and lactation rooms for the staff. I think we also have that for the public.
We are providing wellness rooms for the public as well. Yep.
Wellness
Absolutely.
and lactation.
Yep.
Okay, good, thank you.
Yep.
Great questions, thank you. So we'll talk about Lapine and Sisters, and then we'll pause before we go on to Redmond. At Lapine, there's some areas that have great bones and we're leaving as is. And then there's areas where we can make really kind of surgical but impactful improvements to increase the ability of the building and the staff to provide service. And so one of the first things we're doing is we are transforming kind of the entry location to do a couple things. Number one, get people into the library experience sooner. So we're able to grab some more program space and really allow you to see right into the action of the library right away. And so we're doing that by revising that vestibule area. And then we are also creating in the same location that the meeting room is now, we're relocating the storage to the outside wall and putting in an operable door or wall on that top side where Matt's cursor is. And whether that wall is glass or solid, what it allows us to do is have that meeting room be used all day. You know, when it's kind of separated and hard to supervise, it will sit empty from time to time. And so this really gives you the expansion capacity of that meeting room, you know, every hour that the building is open, as well as after hours. The other thing we're doing is creating 2 tutoring rooms and a little meeting room kind of at the top center of your screen. And then we're reconfiguring kind of the teen and the overall collection area over on the right. And really making sure that we're enhancing the collection, enhancing the connection to technology, and creating a center area of the library that's all about really vibrant display and kind of what's new and what's happening at the library. And then in order for the library staff to keep up with the processing of materials that are coming and going and provide kind of enhanced, you know, services, what we've done is give them a little bit more efficient layout and access to the courier pieces that come and go, and making sure that there's plenty of space for staff to kind of, you know, touch down and then head out to the floor to serve the public. And Derek, I don't know if you want to add anything. I know we've kind of gone back and forth.
I think you covered it, Ruth.
Yeah, I think the only other thing that I might add on is kind of reconfiguring the book drops. Currently, they're not as close to the entry and kind of all of the kind of services that are associated with the new book drop locations, both exterior and interior to the building.
Yeah. And Sisters, you know, has a really similar floor plan, just kind of flipped with a few adjustments. And so some of the changes you're going to find will feel a little bit familiar, but definitely unique to the community of Sisters, which is really known for its proclivity for community events. And so there's a couple things we're doing to really speak to that community's essence. So again, kind of reducing the size of that vestibule area so we can program it a little better, grab a little bit more library space, and make sure the user feels like they're in the library kind of right away. That center area you're seeing where it says display and seating, imagine that that's all really engaging display of new materials and seating. But on the day that we want to have kind of a, you know, another kind of event that could be out in the open, those elements could roll to the side and tables could be set up for a craft activity or a book signing or something in addition to the meeting room. And the meeting room, we've done something similar where we have the operable door so that we can either contain an activity in there during the day or after hours, but also open it up. And so we can really get that much more high level use and better supervision for that space day in and day out. We've also added a couple tutoring rooms and a small meeting room. So that will be a great use. And we're going to keep the fireplace. We're just going to change it from being a gas to an electric. So really making that sustainability move. But we all know that's kind of a favorite spot to sit. So we want to make sure that that stays in the project. And again, bringing the book drop closer to the front door so it's more convenient to use. Anything to add there?
No, I think you did a great job, Ruth.
Okay, so again, as Todd mentioned, we are just in the process of schematic design. So this is kind of where we've landed. So there isn't more information to kind of convey at this point. But if there are any questions related to Sisters in Lapine, we're happy to take those now.
Yeah, I guess I have a question. I hate to monopolize this. Does anybody, other board members have questions?
I have one after you're done.
Yeah,
Well, you
I
go
have
ahead.
one.
Oh, why don't you guys go ahead?
I just wanted to know about plans for outside areas, whether or not those are going to be expanded, that patio area off the main meeting room, whether there are plans to do anything with that.
Currently, we're not planning to expand the existing outdoor areas, Anne, but I think what we've talked about is, do we need to furnish them differently? Do we need to provide better power? You know, so people will just, you know, go out there when the weather's nice and be able to plug in and use the Wi-Fi. So I think rather than thinking about expanding, we're thinking about how can we encourage and enhance the use. And I know there's other landscape improvements that we are talking about making at the two locations, either to improve accessible access or to improve kind of the existing landscape condition, especially at Lapine along the highway there.
Yeah,
Right, and I know there were a lot of comments about outdoor usage that people would really enjoy those opportunities at this, particularly at those two locations. And so I think there's some pent up demand there.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that isn't shown on this, but on our site plan, there is a need for this doorway that comes off the adult collection to have an accessible route to the sidewalk. And so we are going to be adding a sidewalk along the plan east edge of this. And we're going to extend that over to that patio that is just out north of the fireplace as well, so that people can get access that outdoor space more easily. Right now, they have to kind of walk across the grass to get to it. And what we've heard is a lot of people just don't even know that that outdoor space is there. So we are planning to enhance that access to that location.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I was also going to ask about that little back space that's never really been used. Also on the patio, we have such a lovely patio off the meeting room. Is there any plan to be able to put any kind of heating unit or a fireplace or a fire pit or something to make it usable longer?
That's a great comment. We've talked a lot about fireplaces in the building, Bunny, but we haven't talked about outside. I think, a heating element, we could talk about that. We might not want to build a fire under the wood roof. I'm thinking that might cause some things down the road, but that said, I think you bring up a great point.
Good. Yeah, I think it's a beautiful area. It would extend the time. Also, the computer area, does that give us more computers, usable computers, the way you've designed it as opposed to what it is now?
That's a great question. And I should know that off the top of my head because we're showing 9 right now. And I don't know if Lynn, you remember the number that's there?
I don't know the exact number, but I do think 9 is more than what you currently have for public PCs. And then also remember too, that you've got that Wi-Fi there too. So people are coming in more and more with their own devices. So but I do believe 9 is more.
Good. Okay.
Thanks, Lynn, for letting us put you on the spot.
I have a question as well, Ruth. From the community input, there was great interest in having creative and maker spaces at all our libraries. I was wondering how that might be incorporated into both the Lapine and the Sisters schematic design.
Great question, because we've heard that a lot. And that definitely distinguishes the users in your county, just the demand for, do-it-yourself creative programs. So we're continuing to look for ways to embed opportunity there in each building. So please keep, sending ideas. I'll talk a little bit about Sisters, just because that was one where events and programs seem to be right up their alley. One of the things we can do to enhance creative use of the space is make that meeting room an area people could flow into during the day. If it's an enclosed space and something's going on, you might be like, I don't know, am I allowed to go in? Is that a group that's open to people dropping in or not? So creating the ability for the meeting room to feel open and welcoming for more of those creative activities to draw folks in. And then if, like I said earlier, if there's areas of the floor plan where things are on wheels and we can kind of scoot them aside and have areas where we could bring out creative tables for, a Lego project or a quilting session, or we're just letting your existing square footage do more, than it can right now. And then you'll see at Redmond and Central, we're able to build in a little bit more infrastructure. But I think at both Sisters, Lapine, the branches, we're going to look for ways where things can be movable or flexible to take on more activities like that during the day.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, our meeting rooms are showing kind of a seating configuration for a lecture style, but we do have associated storage with it that will allow those chairs to be moved away and tables kind of to be brought out for kind of different types of activities, whether it's crafting or kind of other kind of makerspace programming that the library would like to do. And that it would have a more direct connection with this operable partition here.
Yeah, I like the idea of the operable partition, because it just expands the capacity of that room for larger events and really opens up a lot of possibilities for use if the other the shelving and stuff is mobile.
Yeah, and this branch is really great because like you said earlier, it's got that covered space. And so you imagine if you could roll some tables out there and do painting with a story time group after a story time session. You know, you can kind of make a mess out there and it's fine. You're undercover. And that's a really unique feature to this branch that some of the other ones do not have.
And also, Ruth, you said that that meeting room, you wanted it to be more inviting. It looks a bit like it is now. How is that?
Oh, okay, great question. Thank you for asking. Because you're right, we're leaving it in the same location, but we're doing a couple things. I'll annotate here, so bear with me. This whole wall now will open up. And so imagine that that whole area here, you could see right in and say, oh, look what's going on in there. That looks interesting. I'm gonna walk in. Because often if you can only see in through like a doorway, you know, you feel like it's maybe not open to others. So that's one thing we're doing. The other thing we're doing across the system is making sure that the meeting rooms all have the same kind of consistent amenities. So operable door, so it can spill out, a small kitchenette, so you can have coffee or clean up after an activity, a storage closet. So you, like Matt said, you can really pack everything up and put it away if you really want to clear a huge floor space and have a yoga class or, you know, something different. So I think we're trying to make the existing space do more than it can right now, if that makes sense.
And I'll add that right now, what we're showing on all of these is sort of the lecture seating kind of furniture arrangement, mostly to make sure that we can, you know, get that many people in. But in reality, I think what Ruth's getting at is that storage room will allow a lot of flexibility in how you set that room up to be able to use it more flexibly during the day.
Mhm.
Good, thank you.
Let me ask you, that flexibility is one of the keys for any design now. Question though, one is, what's the capacity on the two meeting rooms compared to what it is now? The one in La Pine and the one in Sisters. What
You know,
would be the capacity?
We're generally leaving them about the same size, Ray, with the exception that at La Pine, by moving the storage and expanding the building a little bit under that soffit, we did grab a little extra square footage there in the La Pine meeting room, but in general, they're staying about the same.
So about the same capacity.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I like the idea of the
except-
movable wall, but, oh, who was that?
Oh, I was just gonna add, because we can open that wall, we can actually expand out into the library if we needed to be able to fit
Right.
more people.
Right, that's a
Yeah.
feature. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my next question is, I like the movable walls. I'm a little concerned that you place both of the meeting rooms with the movable walls into the children's area.
All right, tell me.
What are we gonna have when we have both areas being utilized?
Yeah, tell me a little, I'd like you to rephrase your concern a little bit, Ray. Are you concerned about acoustics or unpack that a little bit for me?
Well, different populations.
Oh, okay, I understand. So what you're saying is if the children's area is busy one day, which we hope it is every day,
Right.
you have a different program happening in the meeting room, you may or may not spill out into the children's area. But if it's a story time program, you might spill out into the children's area. Is that kind of what you're?
Well, so I'm thinking is you're actually going to use the meeting room as the story time, because that's what we do now, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
And
if there's a conflict,
I think right now
Can
you
we
all
do-
sort, yeah, I think you all sort through that right now because story time generally happens in the morning. And so you're able to kind of schedule all the other programs so they don't overlap with story time. I think that's a condition you have right now, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, I'm
That's
more
correct.
concerned with
Yeah.
parents bringing their children in at any time they want into the children's area and then finding out that there's something going on in the meeting room without that wall there that might be hazardous for little kids to wander into.
Yeah. It feels like that's something the library staff can work through. Ray, because that's probably not unlike what they have now, where they're managing different age groups of people all the time. And, you know, we're not saying that door has to be open all day, every day. We're just giving you the option for when it's helpful.
I'm just wondering if there's an option for putting it somewhere else, separating those two. I've seen before where you said the meeting room would open up into like the display seating area.
Mm-hmm.
Or toward the vestibule, so people can actually see the activity when they're coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to do that with
Right.
either or both of these instead of putting it right next to children?
We've definitely tossed around different configurations of this. I know DPL, we've talked about the pros and cons both ways. And just to be clear, there is a door and a window here. Not kind of the expanse you're talking about, but I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts about, you know, what's adjacent to the meeting room or not. It's a little jigsaw puzzle here in these branches. So all your feedback is really helpful.
Can we move the interior walls?
Some, yes.
Some.
And some, no.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking, what if you flip the meeting room and put the children's down there on whatever that lower right corner is, and put the meeting room in the upper right, contiguous with the display seating area.
Yeah,
So
the
when you walk
location of the meet.
into a great big area.
The location of the meeting room currently allows for an access to that meeting room after hours, with access to both the women's and men's bathrooms and all the services that want to go associated with that meeting room during and after hours when the library is closed. So that operable partition wall would be secured, and a community group or could meet in the meeting room without having access to the full library.
Well, I know that the meeting room where it is many times spills out onto the patio. So I would not be in favor of moving that. That's a very workable system there.
That's great to hear. Thanks, Bunny. Okay.
Agree with that. I'll add just a couple thoughts. Sorry for the noise upstairs if that's carrying down, but we did also look at totally agree with what's being said, like because the meeting room being in a really good location for that outside access, and then also the after hours connection to the entry area. So that part, the meeting room, after thinking about it in different locations, really seemed like it should stay where it's at. Then the only other option is moving the kids area itself, but and replacing with a different program, but again, returning to this well-loved area with the fireplace and the seating that's currently in that zone. It didn't seem right to relocate the children's area next to that zone. So keeping that adjacency with the adult area and the well-loved and very nicely proportioned space for that fire space, that adjacency seemed to work out really well. So the design team definitely discussed the same things that you're pointing out, Ray, this adjacency with the children's area and the meeting room. But once studying a lot of different options, felt like this was still the best layout to continue with.
Yeah. Anything else on Sisters or Lapine before we move to Redmond?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I think that strong desire for access to the meeting rooms after hours really is an important consideration. And that was something that was voiced really strongly in Sisters, I believe. So yeah, like you said, it is a jigsaw puzzle. It's moving the parts around and trying to see where they fit best. And this plan seems workable to me.
Okay, I think maybe I'll just move on. We can certainly come back and revisit at the end, but I want to just make sure that we're cognizant of our time. So we'll move on to the updates on the Redmond Library.
Yeah. So this is a site plan of the current block in downtown Redmond where the existing library is. So Deschutes Avenue is to the bottom, Cascade Avenue to the top, 9th to the left. And the area shown in gray is kind of the proposed in development footprint of the new building. And you probably remember we talked about, because we're able to collect all the parking in one location, we're really able to make more efficient use of this block and grab some space that we can really cultivate for outdoor use. And you're seeing that to the south and west side there. And we'll talk a little bit more about that patio. We're also still thinking that we will have a drive up after hours book drop, and also a service window that during business hours, you can interact with a librarian to get materials that you've put on hold. So that's still pretty exciting. So now we've zoomed in on that same floor plan. North is up, and the areas shown in yellow are some of the program areas I think we heard a lot of comments and requests for in the feedback. And we're kind of excited to keep developing and get feedback on from both of you and the community. So at the upper left, we have a large meeting room area that can be divided into two. Again, it's available at night because it's right off the parking lot and it has its own entry and exit. It has its own kitchenette, storage, restroom, AV, it's kind of its own little self-contained unit for after hours. But then it does also have great visibility into the library kind of as you come in. So when you come in here, great views into those spaces. And then also both meeting rooms have connections here into the library. And then we've been continuing to refine this program area on the lower left. So the space that kind of has a really great connection to that southwest patio, and thinking about how this is really where some of those creative activities can take place, and whether they're organized, every Tuesday at 2, this program happens, or whether you just know you can come with your own, bring your quilt bag, bring kind of whatever project you're working on, and set up camp. You'll be with like-minded folks, and there will be the equipment and the support, for you to work on your own activities as well. And so what you're seeing here are rooms for specialty equipment, so we can manage, exhaust or control and safety of the equipment, like a 3D printer, things like that. But some also little small recording rooms associated with it. And then really thinking about this area, like having flexible furniture for projects, programs, people to connect, and thinking about how we can have a lot of different activities take place there as kind of the life of this building takes root, over time. And then the area that we're also starting to develop even more is this area here on the right, which is devoted to kind of children from, 0 to teen, and the teenagers are upstairs. So we really have the freedom to kind of zone this area and cultivate it for kind of younger users and their caregivers. Having an enclosed story time room is definitely part of the plan. And then starting to think about, what are the different collection elements? How do we engage and attract both the early learning group and their parents, but also the elementary age readers. So I think that's an exciting part of the building you'll see us pushing forward here in the next few months. And then also you're seeing that other yellow box is the stairway up to the second floor.
Yeah, and before we move up to the second floor, just wanted to point out that in this location, there's the restrooms, but there's also a family restroom located here, and that publicly accessible wellness room located right there. Off
great.
Of the
Yeah, great catch. And now once you've made your way upstairs, I think we're going to continue to revisit kind of where certain pieces of the collection and activities happen up here. But what we know is that the nonfiction and fiction collections will be up here. There'll be some display and co-working space. and the teens. And so I think we're going to keep massaging kind of where the right spots for those to happen. You can also see that we have a large meeting room here, 2 kind of group study or meeting rooms here on the left, as well as, 3 small tutoring or phone rooms. I think more to come up here. And then we've started kind of trying to develop, like, now that we're settling in on how the building organizes itself and functions, how it's placed on the site, how does it start to look and feel? And we've really just started, dipping into this. And I think, yes, so here is a view from the southwest corner. Imagine that your back is kind of to the corner with the city hall, and you're looking up at that big patio that we talked about. You're seeing kind of the 2 floors of the library with the children's area in the background, and all of the activity that could be visible both inside and spilling out. You're also seeing that big kind of porch that's extended out over this patio, and that's doing a couple things. Number one, it's giving us great solar protection for when the sun does hit that glass at certain times of the year. We want to manage that so the inside is comfortable. And then it's also creating cover for that outdoor patio. So we can really use that space so much more of the year because it does have cover. And then here is a view from the parking lot. So from the north side, you're walking toward the building, you see that kind of the upper floor of activities and meeting rooms. You can see right into those meeting rooms on the right that are open after hours. So you really get a glimpse right into the library from that north side of the parking lot. Inside, I think we talked a little bit about how we're excited to use mass timber for this building. So that means a wood structural ceiling. So you'll see that, wood columns and beams, some steel, and then upstairs we have a wood and steel truss. So that warmth of the wood and steel structure is really, I think, going to give a warm and inviting character to the buildings, not unlike what you already have at some of your locations where you have expressed wood structures and beams, Downtown Bend, Sisters, Lapine. It's definitely a characteristic that you have across the system. And so here is a view. You've just come in from the south, looking toward that north entry. You've got the creative space in action on the left, display and kind of what's new and interesting down the center. That stair on the right is what goes up to that second floor program we talked about. So we'll pause here and kind of talk about any questions, thoughts, observations for Redmond.
Yeah, this is Cynthia. I have a question and a comment. Number one, I love the fact that you thought that meeting room space. That's one thing Redmond does not have. We do not have, you have to use your schools and that's very hard. So I think the fact that you made such a large meeting space with the retractable walls, so 2 different meetings, that's going to get used plenty. I'm positive of that. One of the things that I'm wondering about is where have you guys talked about it all? How you're going to utilize aspects of the present building. It was a school that is important to a lot of people in this community. So in that one back room, in the one back space, there is the actual teacher's wall with their closet and everything. And then also utilizing any of the bricks that's in the center of the library. That was the courtyard of the school.
Oh, Cynthia, I feel like you were listening in on our team meetings this week. How did you know? I feel like, you touched on something that has been right at the tip of the conversation for the past couple of weeks. So I have a couple updates, nothing definitive because we're still exploring. So this is a really timely conversation. So number one, we know about the wood cabinet piece. And we have started documenting it, and we've sent photos to some of our team of experts to start thinking about ways to incorporate that into the building that doesn't feel kind of token, like, oh, neat, we saved that again and stuck it in the corner. We really want to do it in a way that pays authentic kind of homage to it, because it is quite a special piece. So it's going to take us a while to get that right. But then the brick piece, the contractor that the library hired last week, I think, was already down there and surgically removed 2 sections of brick, the oldest type and the newer type, because we wanted to see how does it come apart. Because when we think about reusing brick, there's a few things that are technically kind of critical. Number one, can we pull out the brick and disengage it from the mortar? Because different eras of mortar behave differently. Some come off easily, some do not. Some brick has had, depending on how it was made, its properties, will still be in great shape and has the integrity to be used again. Some, you start pulling it out and it's, kind of crumbling in your hands. We have 2 different types of brick, from different eras. One was built when bricks just load bared on top of each other, like the weight on weight. We don't build that way anymore. It's not seismically safe. But the other generation of brick has the holes in it for rebar and attaching it to the building safely. So I think it was just last week when we started to understand what we have and like technically, can we reuse it? So I think having that information from the contractors was the first step to understanding if we can even entertain the idea, because it comes up, in every conversation we have about the Redmond Library.
Thank you.
And I would like to know, reusing the brick as a building material is one thing, but we could also reuse it if it's deemed that we're just not able to reuse it as a building material for whatever reason. There's a lot of other ways we could reuse it. So I think the team's mind is kind of wide open here. So if you have any good ideas, send them our way.
Any other questions on Redmond?
I
guess I have a question. Could we go back to the first floor slide, please?
Yep.
The one that shows where the meeting rooms, and I know we have a lot of community service groups and nonprofits that use the library for providing resources to our community. So I think it's important to have something a little more private available maybe on the first floor. I know upstairs on the second floor, we've got, some of the smaller meeting rooms or tutor rooms, but just, I guess, yeah, we do have.
Is that some of the groups, Anne, that provide like social service network kind of a bit, or tax counseling or lawyer in the library? Or I want to make sure we're thinking of the same groups that you are.
Well, I know I'm a CASA volunteer, so I support kids in foster care.
Oh, yeah.
And many times our families are able to unite at the library to have visitation. And it's nice to have a little bit of privacy, but then access for the kids to explore and enjoy the library. So maybe a combination of privacy and the ability to explore at the same time.
That's a great comment. I think as we're moving some of the, because we're still developing a few of the pieces, we'll file that in our thinking cap here, because maybe we can, if we know that's a need, maybe we think about how some of the meeting rooms on, like you're seeing the little meeting rooms kind of here on the lower left, maybe there's a way we can organize that in a way that gives it a little bit more privacy, like you said.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no, great.
Maybe understanding if there is a need for it to be on the ground floor versus the upper floors, and maybe you're thinking of why it wouldn't want to occur on the second floor, would be helpful to understand.
I think it just, with the population, I know some of our mental health programs may, you know, the second floor is, you know, removed away. But when we're meeting with, you know, families that have children, just so that, you know, they have that access to the children's library, they still feel like they're very much a part of that community.
Okay.
So I think it kind of depends on that, the audience or who's using that. Because I know we do, and as we move forward, we'll be working a lot more with our houseless community. So providing resources for them and to have our nonprofits, you know, accessible to that population as well.
I'd like to add on to what Ann's saying. Is she's saying the library is a really important place where families, where the children are in foster care, where the parents and the children can come together to meet. The library is a really ideal place for them. And being part of the children's section, that would just, so I totally understand what Ann is saying. It would be nice to have a private space that is close there to the children's section. And I agree with that 100%.
Great. Other
Those
comments?
are great ideas. And I think that is important to realize that not all meetings are adult oriented, and that having kids close to materials that might interest in it, attract them and sponsor, you know, foster interaction with early learning materials would really be ideal, and a great way for the parents to be with their kids. The question that I had, because one of the comments that came up a lot, I mean, obviously we're dealing with a lot of diverse groups, types of people throughout each community. And I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to what you're doing as far as acoustical protection from areas. I mean, I know I like the fact that the children's and the makers spaces here, creative spaces, are on the same floor, because then everybody can just kind of have at it. But I mean, are there materials and things like that? I mean, how are you dealing with acoustical, well, say upstairs in the teen area versus the adult area?
Yeah, we're gonna put gags over all the teens so they just can't say anything out loud. That's where we're gonna start. Just kidding. So great question. And I always wish our acoustical engineer, because he is so thoughtful and trained in this, and he's giving us lots of, you know, actually technical criteria for how we accomplish what you're speaking to, Ann. So I'll give it a shot. So you're right. The first important decision is putting noisy stuff together in a way that it doesn't flow into the stuff that wants to be quieter. That's the first kind of basic decision you make before you get into materials that help contain. And so I think we're going to think a lot about the stair opening, what's near it, because that's another decision we can make. Just here on the first floor, in the meeting rooms and out in the creative and children's space, the first thing we're doing is our wood deck that we talked about is actually called, it's an acoustic wood deck. So it kind of alternates the wood members and gives a little indent where insulation sits. So it's not a typical wood ceiling where everything just bounces off like a hard surface. It actually has acoustic kind of slots of insulation built into it. So that's going to do a lot right out of the gate. And then I think we're going to have our acoustical engineer look at areas that might need a little more attention. The meeting rooms, do we need a cloud that kind of drops in? The story time room, do we need extra around wall surfaces? So there's kind of 3 degrees, right? There's the, what do we put next to each other in the building? What's kind of a general strategy across everything, the wood deck? And then where do we need additional measures? So I think that's kind of where we're headed so far. But like Matt talked about in that schedule earlier, that's absolutely kind of what we're going to start testing here going forward. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you very much. That was helpful.
Are there small meeting rooms on the first floor?
Yes, there's one small meeting room for 4 people here and a small phone room located right next to it. And then there's a separate kind of recording. It's a small meeting room, but the idea is that if somebody wanted to go in and record a podcast or film a TikTok video or something, that could
Do
occur
a Zoom
there.
call. Mhm.
Yep.
Yep.
Is there going to be after hours access to those?
The big meeting rooms, yes, but not the smaller spaces.
Is there any way to design it so there could be? Because a lot of people want to come in after work.
Yeah, that's probably a library hours of operation question.
Or
'Cause I know-
design, somewhere you can design that so there's outside entry and you can close it off to the interior.
Mhm.
I suppose
Yeah.
you would still have to have access to washrooms for all of the meeting rooms.
Mhm. Mhm.
Something to consider.
No, thank you. That's a great
And
comment.
we've had quite a few comments that people want meeting rooms for like 4 to 6 people.
Mhm.
And so the big meeting rooms would be overkill.
Right, and they get booked up too for
Right.
different type. Mhm. We'll put that on the list and we'll talk about that with DPL. That's great. Thank you.
The other question I've had is your drawing for the facade facing the park. We'll go back to that. It looks very modern and industrial here. A lot of glass, a lot of steel. And of course, you want to soften that with the wood inside the building. But I was just wondering, how does this look vis-a-vis the park and City Hall, the design of all the other buildings in the area? Because one of the things people have said is they love the old building, and part of it is the look of it.
Yeah, no, we need to sit at kind of a sweet spot. And I know we talked about this before where, you know, we want to be respectful and be a great neighbor to a downtown that, like you said, is well loved, and the character, you know, has established itself over, you know, many, many decades. And so you want to be a good team player in that environment. And then yet be honest that we're building a building in 2022 and not 1890. And we have different technologies that are appropriate. And the library is a modern visionary institution. They kind of want to, you know, have that visible. And so I think what you're going to see us continue to work with, Ray, is how do we use brick and steel and wood, which are the predominant materials used all throughout downtown Redmond, and use them in a way that allows us to be a good neighbor, but also say that we're a new and different entity. We're a modern library. We've got energy and you can see into it. And I think what you're seeing here is the side of the building that is quite open and visible. But when you go around the building, you're kind of seeing it from that rendering that we had on the parking lot side. There will be areas of the building that have smaller windows and more solid. And so I think that you'll see us continue to kind of work through how do we do both things here at this location.
Yeah, it's a balancing act, but it is a concern. I assume you'll be running a charrette for the community with 1 or 2 design concepts and let the public have their input as to what they like and don't like about it. I know we've done that with all our other buildings.
Well, I think part of what we had just had up on the website was an opportunity for people to comment and to see it.
No, but in the charrette, you actually see, you would see the picture that you had of the south side of the building, the north side of the building, not just the blueprint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because what you want to have is people, this is aesthetics.
Yeah.
People are visual. When they look at the
Yeah.
building, they go like, oh, I love it or I hate it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's
That's
like
probably,
hard to convince them otherwise. Once they're
That's-
inside, they love the functionality of the building, maybe.
yeah.
But
You know,
that initial, you only get one chance to make your first impression. right?
Oh, yeah, wise words, right? And I think we've also learned over time that as much as we want to make every single person happy, you know, it's tough because we all bring our own subjective kind of characteristics. So I don't know if Todd or Chantal wants to talk a little bit about the next steps of community input. Because I think that's kind of what Ray's getting at.
Yes, and Ray, thank you. We are planning on having community discussions and charrettes in the physical buildings. We're waiting for COVID to die down a bit and to make sure that these drawings are getting closer, so we have more detail to share with the public. But definitely this spring, we'll be organizing charrettes in each of the locations. So everywhere, so for Central, for Redmond, La Pine, Sisters, Sun River, and East Bend. So downtown Bend, we will not be doing because we're just too far off from that. But the others will definitely be getting that in-person charrette experience, as well as displays that we'll be putting up in the libraries for a few weeks to a couple months.
Maybe we can put them around town, because I find when we put in the library, it's just the people who use the library. We're trying to reach out to the entire community. But one thing I would ask you to do is what I found most useful on a charrette process. The architects are there, obviously, to answer questions, but if people can see multiple designs and say, what it is about this one I like, what is about that one I like, it gives the architects a chance to sort of look and say, well, we could do these and meld it, and gives them more opportunity to design, not for everybody's taste, but to really get a feeling of what the majority of people like and don't like. In your design process, you minimize the dislike and maximize the like parts. Not just, I mean, it's as simple, some places are simple as, what's the texture and color of the brick? I've been in charrettes where people go like, I hate that red, but I want a fire engine building. You know, it's like,
I know, you know, Ray, the funniest example that, you know, Sean Roberts and I have was years ago at a public library meeting. All the man wanted was a paper towel holder rather than an air dryer. And that made his day.
Yeah.
And so you're absolutely right. Sometimes it is the smallest thing, but if you can listen and show that you heard, he came up to us at the grand opening. He's like, you did it, paper towels. And so and I mean, we're chuckling, but he was absolutely sincere. That made his day. And so you're right about listening to the little stuff. It's really critical.
Give them choices.
Yeah.
I don't know if I understood exactly what Ray was saying or not, but about the conference rooms upstairs. Ray, you don't live in Redmond. I do. And I've been part of many organizations that have been trying to find places to meet. We do not have meeting spaces in Redmond. So the way you guys have it designed, that is not overkill. I think the idea of the one larger space and then that can open up with the retractable wall into another bigger space. I would imagine you guys talk to the librarians there. Didn't they share with you that they have people coming in on a regular basis asking what kind of a space is there available for meetings?
Yeah.
Well, let me clarify, Cynthia. I wasn't saying that the size of that meeting room is an overkill. That was part of a statement where they were saying the smaller meeting rooms, if we could make them usable after hours, that would be great. But if they had to use just that one big, large meeting room, that would be an overkill for a group of 4. So it wasn't that the meeting room is an overkill. It's like the comment was need access to the smaller rooms after hours.
Okay, all right. Thank you for your clarification.
Yeah.
Yeah, should we move to Central? Does that sound okay? We can always come back. Okay, so here is kind of that entire parcel with the roundabout on the right. The central library is the gray footprint down kind of on the lower right, and we're kind of walk you through all the pieces that have been in development since we last saw you. Okay, now we've zoomed in, right, just to that southern portion of the site. And the Brita Street entry is on the left. So people coming in by bus or transit or car are going to come that way. We've talked about how the drop off is kind of, I'll annotate here poorly. Kind of have that drop off aisle here. Main entry here under that kind of large civic overhang with a lot of outdoor space here that's both landscaped and hardscape. So it can really support a lot of different events. So amphitheater seating here, or just, it's a sunny day and I'm going to sit out here and drink my coffee and wait for a friend. So giving you some versatility there, along with covered bike parking right here. And then on the south side of the building is where we kind of have the nuts and bolts traffic. So if you're bringing FedEx deliveries or UPS, or you're coming to the loading dock, you're going to be coming in, and here's the loading dock, deliveries, trash, and this is the staff parking lot. And then also that after hours service window that we talked about is here. So this is kind of the workhorse side of the site, where we kind of separated those forms of traffic to really make a much safer north parking lot for users. Oh, and maybe I should point out the bike trail. We've talked a little bit about that, but the bike trails kind of weave in right here, and it does kind of dive in to that, provide access for that covered bike parking that we talked about. Anything else I should mention, Matt?
I think we'll get to this outdoor landscaped area that will be connected to some of the meeting spaces, but just note that it's located over here, that there's kind of outdoor pathways and areas to do outdoor library programming, as well as just allowing visitors to kind of access nature there.
What's the difference between the circles with the plus and then the little looks like a sun with a plus?
Different tree types, right, Matt?
Mm-hmm. That's correct. Yep.
If I had my landscape architect hat on right now, I would probably say one is a tree and it has a tree canopy, and one is a conifer, or one is a shrub. I think the round ones with the circles are street trees. So like they're along the, oh, thanks, Robert. So the round ones along the street edge with the plus are street trees. So they grow up and have a canopy kind of up here. So they're still like safe around streets. But some of these other ones are indicating more like evergreens or shrubs. Robert, do you want to chime in? I'm doing my best here.
No, I mean, I have nothing to add. It's called out in some of the other documents as deciduous versus coniferous. And I think the coniferous was like a coniferous / shrub. That's why they're drawn a little spiky.
Thanks.
So now we've zoomed in on that same view, but are showing kind of what's on the first floor. And, some of this is still in development. So we'll kind of talk through things that you're going to want to focus on. We talked a little bit about that front door here undercover. So coming in from the parking lot, it's really visible undercover, great spot to wait for your ride. And you're getting to see into the library here, wow, what's happening, what's exciting. And when you come in, lots of display, cafe, collection, holds, self-checks, all kind of, really flexible, engaging display area for the library, so they can change it up as often as they want to. And then I think we're going to zoom in on the event area, but we're just going to call attention to it. We've worked on this area over here a little bit to where instead of having two spaces that were divisible and useful after hours, we've reconfigured it to keep the same seat count, but have 3 divisions. And so we're kind of excited about how that gives you a little bit more versatility, especially considering the size groups that you have more often. So that's pretty exciting. So here, now we're showing you kind of, if you were up at that mezzanine level, kind of the second level of the staff work area, but all the rest of the first floor is double height. So this is all kind of a really tall, gracious civic space, but we have 2 floors of office over on the right. But what that allows us to do for your meeting area is to kind of have those 3 spaces that we told you about that allows you to have 3 different meetings or craft programs going on at once. But you also have this mezzanine here, which can operate as its own meeting room space and spill outside to that outdoor area that Matt mentioned. Or at increasing increments, you can connect these 4 spaces. So they could be used in kind of one big whammy here for that kind of once a year special thing. Or you could use them as, 2 and 1 and 1, or, kind of any combination. So we're trying to give you really pragmatic flexibility there for the different programs that we know are in a high demand at the library. So when we go up to floor 2, this is the floor that's kind of, everyone from 0 to teen. And so we have zoned it such that the youngest, 0 to 5, we've put kind of here at the end, not near the stair where they can cause mischief, but also kind of putting them there. We know their environment is going to be really dynamic and exciting. They'll have a little bit more noise associated with them. So do we enclose it or not? But then working backward toward older youth. So we have a story time area here, a creative space right next to it. And then we have teens, as well as the international collection here. So we're really able over this floor to kind of create distinct zones as children develop into different ages with their caregivers. And then the other interesting thing about floor 2 that you probably remember is that we've got the outdoor vegetated roof areas. And we're going to talk just a little bit more detail about what we've kind of developed a little bit more on those. So parts of the roof will be vegetated, but not necessarily areas where we're giving space to hang out. On the east side of the building, there'll be highway noise. And so it'll be vegetated. We'll get all the benefits of that vegetation, but it's not an area for public access. The area to the left is where we'll invite people to be out there and either, spend time on kind of the hardscape space, reading a book, taking a part in activity, or just kind of walking the loop out into the vegetation. And there's a couple examples here. The team's done some great research of high desert vegetated roofs because we treat those differently with regard to soil buildup and plant type and maintenance, etc. So Matt, I don't know if, and I know some folks from the library went on a tour earlier in December, I want to say. I don't know if anyone from that tour wants to chime in, or I don't know if what critical pieces I've left out there.
So
I just think, oh, go ahead, Todd.
Let's say we did a tour of the Moda building, and it's a pretty exciting roof design that I think would have a really big impact for our public here.
Yeah, focusing on like natural local vegetation that might have even an educational component to it, I think. It's super exciting.
On level 3, kind of that same notion of these landmarks that are interspersed throughout the floor for different user groups. So at that far north end, the co-working space, which will have a mix of areas where you can hunker down and get work done, or do a Zoom call, or have a meeting or an interview with someone. In the center, we kind of have a grouping of small meeting spaces from 4 people to 8 people, but then also a creative space. So it's not just kids that like to be creative. We want to make sure we're, interspersing those creative spaces throughout the building. And then down here at the end, we have 2 meeting rooms, as well as an area that we can kind of craft to have its own identifiable character as kind of a spot for quiet reading, and give it its own kind of landmark that, for all the people who want to come to the co-working area and have a really dynamic, kind of more professional experience. There's a spot too for folks who want to curl up and just read their book for a while or have a quiet conversation with a friend. So here's a view of the library as if you were on that bike path that we talked about, heading toward the roundabout. You can see those upper 2 floors of the library, the children's floor and the upper floor. You're kind of getting glimpses in to things that are happening from the bike path. And then you're kind of seeing that the covered bike parking would be under that area you're seeing there. The other thing you're seeing here is that notion that the landscaping that we do bring back, we want to be viable in a desert environment. We want it to be easy and functional to maintain. And we also know we're trying to kind of bring in some berming so that you do have kind of that natural feeling of the topography that's present on site right now. At night, imagine if you've parked and are walking up to the building or, you know, after 4 o'clock in December when, when it's dark. And so you're seeing here kind of that main entry space, the stair up to the upper floors, that large covered porch kind of on the right side of the screen, and the 2 upper floors of lots of library activity up above. And then the event space are kind of the windows that you're seeing over there to the right. So kind of right here would be the doors and the windows into that if you were coming for an evening program. And then we're just starting to explore how the inside looks and feels. And so you're going to see a lot more of that in the coming months. We're just digging into it. But imagine you've got, you know, the book return at the back of the space. We've got large, really, you know, helpful and valuable walls for, you know, display or storage or collection or art. We have the cafe function here on the right and kind of that stair feature with a skylight to kind of lead you up the building and explore what the library has. I think that might be all we had, right, Matt?
Yep, I think that was our last slide.
Yeah, so maybe we go back to faces and kind of have a conversation about anything you'd like us to touch more on, or questions you have for the library.
I was wondering one thing on the middle floor, the floor with for the kids and the teens. So I'm assuming that you have access to the outside, correct?
Yes.
I was wondering, can we go back to that slide?
Yeah, Cynthia, I didn't do a good job explaining that the area near that terrace is kind of an area for everyone, because one of the things we wanted to make sure is that it didn't feel like it was the kids' terrace, you know, that everyone could.
Right. I'm sorry, I didn't.
No, I'm tracking what you're thinking here. So one of the things we did is we made sure that if you're coming off the stair or the elevator, the door is kind of right here. So you feel invited to the terrace and told how to get there kind of right away. You don't have to wade through picture books or things if you don't want to. And then because this is all display, it could be display of anything. So I think that area, when you land on level 2, the hope is that you don't necessarily feel like you're an interloper on the children's area if you just want to get to the terrace. Obviously, if you're coming with kids, you'll feel equally as welcomed. So I think we're trying to place things next to there such that we don't create a perceived access, you know, or like it's a children's terrace or not.
Right. No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that it was a children's terrace or anything. But what I was getting at, what I wanted to say was, I was wondering, I don't know, just thinking about teens, trying to get teens into the library and wanting them to be there. And I was wondering if it literally could be flip-flops, where the international and all the tutoring and the teen space were flip-flops. So the teen space is actually looking out over that green space. I don't know why, but I was just
No,
thinking
that's a
that-
great idea. And again, Cynthia, I feel like you were listening in on our team meetings earlier this week because we've had versions where we had it flipped. And so I think you can see that like there's trade-offs either way. There's really great benefits to both. So it'd be great to hear all of your opinions on that.
I like that idea. I think that's great. Thanks for bringing that up, Cynthia.
Yeah, I do too. I think that's a great idea. That visual connection is so important, and I think it really enhances that.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to give you a little like window into some of the other things that the group was talking about was the international collection is primarily for Spanish speaking folks of all ages, so children to adults. And it's often an area that gets visited by families rather than just adults or just children. And to encourage use of that and to make it feel really accessible and not kind of put into a corner, the reason we tried it here was to give it that prominence right off the elevator and establish a little bit more inclusive aspect there to people in the community whose for English is a second language. There's, with the jigsaw puzzle, there's no good or bad. There's just, different ways to think about it.
Where are the elevators?
They are right. Oh yeah, Matt's got it.
Right there. I think the other factor that we were thinking about for the teens is we're assuming that there is some component of gaming or use of screens in that area, and the desire for it to want to be somewhat tucked away, but kind of still accessible to kind of oversight, and whether or not there wanted to be some more sunlight control. So in the afternoon, if we were thinking there might be screens where they might be able to do gaming, would it be harder to control that kind of light levels in that corner where the international collection currently is? But I think we can definitely study flipping it and looking at how that program gets distributed in that potential location.
Well, I think you guys have, you're getting our first reactions when you've obviously been wrestling with all kinds of factors as you've designed these buildings, and it's great to hear your thought processes and all the things that you've looked at, because you've really been thorough. And I've got to say, looking at Fort Vancouver, that teen area is hands down the best teen area I've ever seen in a library. I mean, I just think of all the aspects of that library design, that particular space is fantastic. So you clearly know what you're doing.
And maybe this is a question for the librarians, the library staff, but have some teens been brought in to ask them what they think and what they want to see in a space for themselves? Lynne or Todd or Chantal?
Not at this point. But this is, I think I'd highlight that this is areas that we are still going to be doing a lot of work on in the design development phase.
And Cynthia, we will be incorporating teen and children input. That'll be really fun to hear what kids think and teens think of these designs. So definitely we'll be incorporating their input once we get things a little bit more refined, like I talked about, and we'll do separate ones that are different than like the charrettes in the community libraries. We'll make sure to make that environment better for them to be able to really share their thoughts.
Maybe I could go to the high schools.
And one thing that we have done already is we conducted kind of a mini charrette with the community librarians, specifically looking at youth librarians and getting input about, like, is this the right placement? Is it the right size? What are some of the features that they would really respond to? So we're doing a lot of the rough placement work right now. When we really start to drill down into like, what are the features that really are going to make a difference? That's when we'll start pulling in from that broader set, I think.
Since, can we go back to the overall plan? I think it was about the first slide. And Todd said that one of the things that we needed to try and nail down is the site plan. And so could you walk us through where are the parking and how do people get from point A to point B in the parking lot?
Sure. Matt, do you want to take it or do you want me to?
Sure. So we have Highway 20 and the new Strobel Lane roundabout will be created here. And then Strobel will be extended to the west. And that's really going to bisect our property into two lots. The south lot, which is going to contain the central library, as well as visitor parking to the north, and then that staff parking and loading zone, plus the book drop off to the south. And because of the grades, so on the west side of the south piece of the property, we're going to be extending Brita north to come up to the new Strobel extension. And because of the grades of this road, the one logical location for the entrance to the site is located mid-block or midway along Brita. And that's where we're pulling cars in and having that drop-off zone right in the front of the building. And then they can pull out and access all the visitor parking that is to the north. But we do still need some additional parking given the overall size of the building. That's what's determining the number of parking spots that we need to provide. And so the north lot is being used for providing that overflow parking, the required overflow parking to the north. And so in large events where there would be more than 100 vehicles coming to visit the library, visitors would be able to park on the north lot. There would be a safe pedestrian crossing across Brita. And this is where we are starting to look at kind of pathways through the parking lot and direct access to the front door of the central library.
Okay. And I know in the comments that we got, one of the things that was mentioned are bike paths that interconnected. And you showed a bike path kind of up to the library, but is there a place that it's interconnected to others?
Oh yeah, great question.
The answer to that is, so ODOT is doing a lot of development on Highway 20. And so this will extend all the way to Empire Boulevard in Bend. And then that will get you, and with an overcrossing across 97. So it really is an extensive bike network, not just on this property.
Okay. Do they know yet where the overcrossing will be?
For Empire?
There's going to be overcrossing on Empire.
Yeah, I do not know the exact location. I know it was discussed at an ODOT meeting that I didn't get a chance to go to. So I'm not sure the exact location.
And also, I know in one of the comments that I've read, people suggested that we have charging station, EV, electric vehicle charging stations, and a means of charging bicycles. And I wondered, is that too early to even start looking at that, or?
No, not at all. And in fact, we are planning to accommodate electrical vehicle charging stations for both the staff parking lot as well as the visitor parking lot. And I think we are just beginning to discuss whether or not bicycle charging stations is something that we want to provide and just need to evaluate that further.
Okay.
But certainly for vehicles, we are planning to provide that in both lots adjacent to the central library building.
And where is the bus, where would the buses come in? I know that was a big important.
Yeah, so we've had some meetings with CET and they're ongoing, and we've identified ideally the location for the bus drop off that they're anticipating to have bus service come to this library location every 20 minutes. And we're preferring a location right along Brita here, whether it's south of in these two like circled areas, that would allow a bus visitor to come and just directly access the sidewalk here and enter here. But that requires that the bus circulation happen, that the bus is traveling north on Brita. And currently CET is anticipating or would prefer to have a bus circulation that goes around Strobel and comes down along Brita traveling south, which would mean a bus station or stop on the opposite side that isn't as ideal simply because of the property that is available on the other side. We can't control it. We don't own that property where that bus stop would be. So there is an alternate suggestion that maybe we provide a bus stop along Strobel on the north side, but really our preference is to have it at Brita, close to where vehicles are entering into our parking lot. It's the shortest distance to the front door of the library, but we're just going to need to continue to have conversations with CET and come to some agreement as to what the bus route is, and then determine where the best location is to provide that drop-off point.
Okay. And then the last thing I wanted to know is there a way to get a copy of the charts? These are very informative, and it's a good way to answer our constituents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we certainly can share this presentation with you and DPL, so we can forward it after this meeting. Mm-hmm.
Good. And also, thank you for looking at the comments. That it sounds like you have thought about some of those comments and included those in your designs. I appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you're not going to use it, why ask, right? I mean, we really want the input. This is, important.
Well, thank you very much. That was super informative. Does anyone have any additional questions at this point? I think what we, as Greg pointed out, I mean, I think what we're looking for today is approval on the level of site plan and size and shape and general layout of the building. So not getting down into the specifics of meeting room locations or exact interior details, but a general sense of these buildings are placed correctly, they're sized correctly, and the general layout is acceptable. And I think this follows along the lines of how we proceeded on this project in general in an incremental way. And I think approval of this level of detail at this point in the design process will be helpful for the architects as they proceed into more detailed design work, because we certainly don't want to get down to a further stage of design and then have a problem and have a lot of time and money wasted. So I think what we're looking for now is a motion about whether or not we're approving of those general things, size, shape, layout, site plan. Is that, Greg and Todd, do I have that correct?
You do.
Okay.
That's exactly what we're looking for.
Let me make a procedural point.
Mm-hmm.
I read the agenda and it says we're going to review. There was no action item. I don't think we should make a motion on this. Maybe you can do a 1 to 5 finger saying, what do you think? But it's not a motion at this point. That's things
Yeah,
sound good or things
I'll,
don't sound good, and there's some parts where we, it's all in process right now. So we're reviewing and saying, yeah, we've seen it. Thank you. We don't have any major objections right now to what you're doing, but we
Lenny, you're
can't
muted.
go and approve it.
Can we make a motion to that we have reviewed these plans and agree that the Miller Hall should go forward? I think we need to give them some kind of direction. I don't want them to stop what they're doing. I want them to have some direction from this board.
Well, unless we object to something, we just say, yeah, we reviewed it, proceed. We didn't have an action item on the agenda. We could bring it up at the next board meeting if you want. But
And
that would
that,
give us time to review the schematics again if we want to do that. I think what they're looking for is, do we think this is crazy?
I'll say, I think I'll back you up, Ray, on the fact that I think we do need a motion and we do need to vote on it, but we should do it at our next meeting because that we'll have public comment, we'll have a chance to discuss.
Okay.
But it is because it's going to be important. We don't want to move forward because it's going to be very expensive to move forward and then make changes. So we don't want to do that based on head nods. We actually want that. So I can put that on the next agenda. It would be nice just for all of us to get a sense of where you're all standing. You don't have, this is not an official vote, but are you in general feeling comfortable with the direction we're going, or just, that would just be interesting to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah,
Maybe we can go to each board member and get a sense of that, and
Right.
but we will still have an official vote.
Yeah, and so let's do it that way. That's a good point, Ray. And so we'll have the official vote in February. But let's just see where people are at and general reactions and, you know. So Ann, do you want to start?
Gotta make sure I unmuted myself. Really appreciated the presentation. Kind of looking forward to seeing what the next step is. I don't have any general concerns or objections at this point.
Okay. Bunny?
I was very impressed with them. The plans, the site plans, the layouts that they have. I have no objections, and I feel comfortable that they have incorporated both our wishes and the wishes of the public.
Okay. Ray?
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, I always love seeing these plans and all the work you put into it. You guys, I'm always impressed by the architects. I love pretty pictures, and you've got so many things to balance and consider. So it's really great, and you've done a good job here. I will say, after seeing the public comments and what my constituents on the east side here bombarded me with, is I'm still very much concerned about the location. And now I'm starting to hear about the design, the size. People are starting to come at me saying, these look like freight trains or freight cars, vans, shoeboxes laid on top of each other. And that doesn't look like Bend. And then when we say, this is what you see when you first come into Bend, people are going like, I don't want to see this thing. Although they like the idea of having a bigger library. So it's like, oh, what are you going to do? It's difficult. I think what you're doing with the smaller libraries is great. I would love, like Greg said last time, maybe we can actually look to see if expand the walls a little bit. It just takes money, but we do have the money. Do we reallocate as the board? And looking over the public comments, one of the things I'm struck by is people actually in the community libraries want to see the pictures that you actually presented to them in the introduction, but they want it in their library, not just central. So that's going to be difficult now. Their mindset is we're going to have large meeting rooms, we're going to have performance centers, we're going to have maker spaces, we're going to have all these things. We're going to have more space for books. And we've presented it to them like that. And if we can expand the floor plans and accomplish that, then I think that would be really, really, that would make the Deschutes Public Library system outstanding for the next 20 years. So interesting what you've done. Thank you so much for this work. But I'm going to reserve based upon what I hear from the public. I would feel much more comfortable if we go forward before the board steps forward and said, we want this, what you've designed. Let's hear what the public has to say too. Get some more input, real input, not just our internet survey, face to face. I know it's tough to do, but if it means we delay for another month, couple of weeks, I think that would give public buy-in, and also you need to have a unified board going forward on this. So that would be good for me.
Okay, thank you. Cynthia?
Yeah, I was very pleased with the designs and the layouts that I saw. I think they look great. I agree with Bunny. I'm really delighted to see that the architect, actually utilized many of the community members' thinking in it. I know in Redmond, when I've talked to people that have been a little bit concerned about, oh my gosh, you're tearing down the elementary school. And then when I talk to them about, what they're going to try and do to make it be part of that center of Redmond, they're very open to it and very excited about it. So anyway, I like what the direction we're going. And I actually had the exact opposite thinking that Ray did. I thought, what a magnificent, if people are driving up from Sisters to see that building, I thought it'd be a beautiful addition. So anyway, everybody's got different tastes.
Yeah, thank you, Cynthia. I am excited and inspired by the designs that you've shown. I mean, I think one of the things going into this, when people talk about library design, it's that aspirational aspect that just grabs people visually and draws them in and makes them proud of their communities. And that it's that vibrancy, it's that use. And that's, I think, one thing that sets our library system apart, is that it isn't just a staid set of buildings with books. It's people engaging with each other and building community and being actively involved with their libraries. And so these designs really capture that for me. And I think they're respectful of where they're located. And I think they use the land effectively and well. And as I said, it's really interesting when we pose ideas or questions, and then you peel back the veil on all the discussions that have gone into this. It's fascinating. You guys are really good at what you do. So yeah, I don't have issues. I know there's going to be a lot of decisions down the road as we refine these ideas, but from what I've seen today, I'm in full agreement with the approach that you're taking. So we can discuss this further, and we will continue to discuss this. And along those lines, Todd and Ann and I met yesterday, and had a really good discussion about a number of different things. But one of the points that Ann brought up was that she felt that the board had lacked time to really have some kind of macro discussions about where we're going and plans and issues. And I think this came up when we talked about the LEED certification. You know, that was an area that we had never stepped back and had a discussion on that, because so often our board meetings are so packed with approvals and with the problems that are on the agenda before us, that we haven't had the opportunity to sit back and have work sessions where we can discuss kind of larger issues. And so what we would propose, what we came up with, was to have kind of quarterly work sessions. And the issue that prompted the meeting between us was Ann's desire to talk about the public comments, which I think we all have been really excited to see those comments and to see, you know, to have the opportunity to discuss those as a board. So I would like to propose that we set a work session to discuss some of these things. And as we go through this construction process, that we suggest ideas for these work sessions so that we can talk about the bigger issues and make sure that we're all moving in the same direction. I think that that's a really good idea. And by gathering those topics ahead of time, we can make sure that we have the right resources and information in the room to be able to answer questions and really have a good discussion on whatever it is we're choosing to discuss. Do we want to excuse everyone and then look at calendars, or what do you think, Todd?
We can do that. I can also have Lori do some polling and just kind of get a sense. I think the recommendation is we set up regular quarterly work sessions so that we're not scrambling to schedule them every time.
Right.
So maybe we can do some polling of the board, assuming the board is wants to continue with this.
Yeah. Does that sound like a good idea to people?
Yeah, it sounds like a good idea.
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be
Yeah,
excellent.
I think
Okay.
that's an excellent idea.
Okay.
Should we,
So,
are you going to send the ideas on topics, or maybe Ann Ness? Since you're the newest member.
Yeah, no, I really just wanted the opportunity to talk with you all largely about some of the public comments, but then just ideas going forward, what the board is thinking. And one topic I'm really interested in is the East Bend Library. I think there needs to be more discussion around the future of the East Bend Library and where that's going. So that's, yeah, I would just really like the opportunity to be able to talk with the board outside of a formal board meeting, where we can really kind of get into the to what we see the direction of the library board going forward.
right. And couple of the issues that we talked about there is, does it make sense how much work and money do we want to put into East Bend as a leased facility? And is now the time to be going forward with looking at property purchases, for instance, for a permanent facility? And where does the board fall on that? What should we be thinking about? What's the timing of that? All of that. So, I think those are two really good topics. That and the comments are really good topics for us to be talking about especially the comments are timely right now, so that we can get input to our architectural team in a time frame that will be helpful to them.
Mm-hmm. I like the idea. We should review or really discuss the public comments up to now, and then see where we still have questions and gaps
Mhm.
in those comments. And what do we want to do? How do we go about filling those gaps or firming up questions that are still unresolved from the
Right.
public? Yeah. And the question of East Bend would be not, going forward to the lease, because I think we've all agreed in the past, leasing the buildings is not viable. It's just economically unsound. So if we want to discuss East Bend, we should be talking about, well, let's talk about East Bend. We get together. What are the issues that we're really facing there? And what do we hear from the public? And do we include that in further survey from the public? It's not too late to make changes. We just have to be able to face our public and say, this is how we use the money, and this is what you told us you really wanted. And we're firm, and we know exactly what you wanted. Let's go forward with it. I don't want to face my voters in 2 years and say, I don't know what I did.
Well, I think we've charted a defined scope of work for this project. And I think we need to stay focused on generating good constructive input for what we've undertaken, and then also plan next steps. So yeah, so I think we have a lot of things to talk about. So if you can let Lori know
Yes.
of any time periods that you're not available, that will make her life easier. Even with doing it the way that we do it, it's still hard to get all of our schedules.
Yeah.
I think so.
When is our next board meeting?
It's February 9th.
February 9th, okay.
Yeah, and I like the idea of setting these up, these quarterly meetings in advance, so we have them on the calendar, and so we can plan around them as far as our other activities in life. So we really appreciate everybody's time today. We appreciate the thoroughness of the presentations. You've really provided us with great information and some exciting designs. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, just one thing, Ann, what's the time frame you're looking at? You want us to tell you when we're not available in February?
Though that'd be helpful for a start, right?
No, let's do that. Starting, what's that? Next week.
Yeah, next week.
Damn, time
Yeah,
is by.
yeah, because I'd like to get this first one on the books, scheduled pretty quickly, because while we've just gone through these comments, and so they're fresh in our mind, and I don't want a big lag time on this. I think it'll be a lot more productive discussion if we can meet sooner rather than later.
I agree. Perfect. Thank you all for the work you've done so far.
Yes.
Thank you. We'll take off now. So thanks a lot.
All right.
Good
Thank you.
afternoon.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye. Thank you.
Are we finished?
I think, Todd, or do you have anything other?
No, you just need to adjourn the meeting and we are done.
Okay, I will adjourn the meeting then. Thanks,
Stay
everybody, for
healthy.
your time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.
Be
see you
healthy,
later.
everybody.